Labai geros progos, nes visai neseniai, visai prieš kelias dienas, leidykla Lapas išleido Roberto Calasso knygą Leidėjo menas, kurią galima drąsiai apibūdinti kaip leidėjų Bibliją. Tai yra knyga, iš kurios įkvėpimo semiasi daugybė žmonių, daugybė leidėjų ir žinau, kad ir Lietuvoje yra leidėjų, kurie tiesiog sako, kad perskaitę šią knygą suprato, kaip reikia kurti tą leidyklą. Ir taip pat leidykla Lapas, kurios leidyklos vadovė Ambrasaitė irgi dalyvauja šiame renginyje, visai neseniai atšventė 10 metų jubiliejų, taigi yra dvi puikios progos pašnekėti apie leidybą, tačiau yra ir kitos progos, nes šiandien knygų mugėje dalyvauja leidėjai iš užsienio, kurie irgi pasidalins tikrai savo mintimis apie tai, kas vyksta leidyboje kitose šalyse, ir mes galėsime pažiūrėti iš įvairiausių perspektyvų apie tai, kaip knygos leidžiamos ne tik Lietuvoje, bet ir kitose šalyse. Ir šis pokalbis vyks anglų kalba. O renginį vesiu aš, 15 min knygų apžvalgininkas Audrius Ožalas. So, I welcome all of our participants at this event, at these discussions, and let me introduce all of you. So, Anastasia, Leonova, Ukraine, IST Publishing. Hello. Then it's Philippas, Meuseris, Germany, Dion Publishers. Rosalinda, Chua, Malaysia, and the name of a publishing house, maybe I will not pronounce it very correctly, but just I'll try. It is Sivagurunach and Chua. Yeah, it's perfect, okay. And Ambrasaitė, as I introduced before that, it's Lapas Publishing House, it's Lithuania. So the first question is, of course, about the book The Art of Publisher. And I believe that all of you have read this book, at least some parts of it. And maybe you can share your impressions about this book and what is the biggest lesson which you've got from this book. And maybe I'll start with Ula, why you decided to publish it, because I think what this book is dedicated to not such a big part of readers. I think it's just, I think it's aimed to a small audience, but actually you just decided you have to publish it. So why?
Yeah, thank you, Audrius, for the question. That's really strange. I've heard about this book some years ago, and I think there were like more Lithuanian publishers considering to publish it, or at least, to publish it. But maybe they also thought that that's too niche. I mean, we will not make any business out of it. And it was last year when I've got this book as a present after one of the Lapas parties, and thought that I will never read books about publishing because we just need to do it. So we are doers. We just one book, another, we just do publishing. We don't read about that. And after the party, I just opened the book because it was already here and thought it's an amazing book for all the audience, for all the readers. It's not only for publishers. And I think the book helps the broad audience to realize what is the role of the publisher in the society. And from my perspective, it's really, so Roberto Calasso really showed that this, or wrote it in the very authentic and authoritative way, that the role of the publisher is actually huge. If we think that some ideas that comes via books, via text, has any influence on our society's intellectual formation. So actually in the beginning there was a publisher deciding whether to publish or not. So I like that Roberto Calasso just put a notion on the publisher as an institution who decides what we will be talking about in the next 5 or 10 years. And the other great thing actually was also that it was kind of a revelation for me to read the book and to know that all the publishers are struggling with money. And Roberto Calasso said that it's an art, the publishing is an art, but an art that specifically needs a lot of money to do that.
And actually, you can only lose money on publishing, and Roberto clearly states that. And Rosalind, what's your impression on that book, and what are the biggest lessons which you've got from this book?
Well, first of all, I think we should congratulate Ula on putting this great book out. She actually introduced it to me last year, right before the London Book Fair. She said, Ros, I've got this great book, you have to take a look at it. Maybe you're interested in publishing it too, but I'm not as brave as Ula. I read it, I absolutely loved it, and I would echo what Ula said. It explains to the reader very simply what the publisher's role is and why the publisher is so important in continuing this tradition of running publishing houses. And I think it's a book that I should buy in bulk and give out to my friends at Christmas, because I still have to answer these questions day in, day out. Ros, what do you actually do? You know, the idea of being a publisher or a publishing director, it's something almost so vague in the minds of many people. People who buy books, people who are very literate, they understand the role of the author, they understand the role of the editor, but the publisher is something that is far, far more ambiguous. I think my biggest takeaway from this book was the fact that even though this book was written some time ago, and he does reference publishers from maybe 500 years ago, the problems we have, the issues we have, the challenges, the joys, it is almost the same today in the 21st century. So this is really a book that is going to stand the test of time. I hope it's going to be a bestseller for you, Ula.
Yeah, and Roberto in this book writes what actually the problems which we had discussed about some 100 years ago are still relevant today, and the publishers are discussing the same things, because we are just talking about artificial intelligence, we are about internet, but actually in the core of everything the problems are the same. And I wanted to ask Philip, okay, Ula said what this book is interesting not only for publishers but also for readers as well, and what do you think the readers will understand from this book?
So my first impression of this book was that Roberto Calasso made something visible which always remains invisible for the reader. Because for the reader in the end, for some readers, it's just printed text on a paper. This is the main focus of readers. This is my experience from the past 20 years when I'm in the business of publishing. But there is a spirit behind. And the spirit is our individual philosophy of publishing business. I'm always trying to explain to my proofreaders and even to the translators that their work also remains invisible. It becomes only visible if there's still a mistake in the spelling. So that means somehow the publisher tries to make a text readable. Of course, there is the input from the author, but the publisher makes it like in an orchestra. So for an orchestra, you have so many talents and experts for each single music instrument, but you need a director to compose. And in that sense, the publisher is a composer as well.
And we already talked about what problems which were relevant some 100 years ago are still relevant today. But I want to ask, are there problems which are relevant, for example, in Ukraine and in Germany and Lithuania and Malaysia are the same? And I wanted to ask you, Anastasia, when you talk to publishers from other countries, do you feel the differences and what the problems which we deal with, or you are basically the same problems, except money, of course?
Yeah, that's the constant problem. Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me here. And sure, I should say that as a publisher, as a small press publisher from Ukraine, it's already feel as a niche to work in this topic, because you have very small audience, and books we publish very similar to Lapa's books feels, a bit limited, and the problems we share money-wise, and then how to work with the audience, and how to just to talk about the valuable of the books we work with, still the same, I think, across the world. And I'm congratulate Ula and all the Lapas team on this book, because I should say that it was probably one of the first books I've read on publishing practice. And I was really therapeutic for me, you know, at the beginning, because you know, when you started and you see his line that if you want to lose all your money, you have to run the publishing house. And I thought, okay, I'm screwed up. and then actually it was very interesting and important to see that he's talking a lot about publishing not only as a business, but, you know, as an art practice, and the way he's focusing on the book as an art object, as a tangible object, is very interesting and valuable for such a small publishers who work in this topic. And then you understand that all these small things like paper and typeset and you know, the way of communication is really important and really can enhance you know, just the experience of reading the book. And I agree with my colleagues that this is not just for publishers in the small field, but also for the broader audience to understand what is going on behind the scenes and why this book's still really valuable.
And Anastasia, you said what the author of this book says. Yes, it is a good way to lose money, but it's actually it's not a business. Not only business, but also a kind of art, and it's a kind of vocation as well. And I think that many of you ask yourselves, not each day, but I think, for example, once in a month, why I do this business, why I deal with books, and you somehow find the answer for yourself. And I wanted to ask Ulla, do you find your answer for yourself? Why do you still run this business, which is not so good money-wise and just not profitable at all sometimes, I think?
Like every day or like every month when we get the sales reports? But I think that was like, how to say, so that's why we published the book, that it's okay. So it's not only you that it's failing in like doing super profitable business, but what I also liked about the Roberto Calasso and what he has written in this amazing book. I mean, it's like, as Ross said, it's like, it's all the answers for our friends asking, why are you so always busy and so broke, and etc., etc. So that Roberto Calasso has put it very nicely, that insightful, that he said that if one day something will change in the world and publishers will have no place, so let's imagine a world without publishers. He said that we all will still meet at the same casino, because it's a lot about betting on the new ideas. You believe that they will be big, but no one else maybe believe at this moment when you get the manuscript. So really, Roberto Calasso really helped me to see our business as very azartish, whatever, so that we are really playing with some ideas and betting the money on what will be sold good, what will be sold bad. And the other side of this coin is that Roberto Calasso is also saying that the good publishing house is actually not a good who's making the very good profit. The good publishing house is who publishes only the books they think it's very important for their portfolio. And I think then when you have a bit lower sales, it's always Roberto Calasso helps realizing that, okay, but do you still believe in the books you publish? Yes. So if yes, you just breathe and continue.
Yeah, but you said what a good publisher publishes only books which he believes in. But I wanted to ask you, does it happen sometimes when you publish a book which you actually don't like at all, but you know, okay, it will sell good? Does it happen sometimes? Rosalind?
No, never.
No?
No. I think because we're a small publisher, I just want to clarify, we're a small publisher. We don't do many books every year. So each book to me is like my child. You know, everyone is absolutely precious. If there are mothers out there, of course, maybe you don't love your children all the same way. You love them in different ways, but you still love your books. And I hope that's reflected in the effort that we put into them.
And Philip, for example, if you have to choose, for example, you have a book which you know it will sell about, for example, 30,000 copies. You don't like it, but okay, I will publish it, and then I will manage I will maybe I can publish 10 books which nobody buys but which are very good. So will you do it?
Yeah, I have to admit, so if I look back, so in the 20 years, I guess I would estimate we published more than 700 books, and out of the 700, I would say 5 books or even 10 books were books what would not let's say, my dream to publish, but somehow we decided to do it, exactly the reason what you were just mentioning. So we had print runs, more than 25,000 copies, which is amazing for us I would consider us as a small publisher. And this helped us to do other books. And if you allow, I would also like to comment on another learning or another comment on the book. In the 20 years of publishing, I was always trained or taught by my audience, you do publishing, you can't earn money, you can't make profit, you can only make benefit. I agree with this. But if we would not make any profit out of the publishing, none of us would sit here. So that means publishers are trained, or the behavior of a publisher is also to say, I can't make money out of it. No, we can make money out of it. And this is the secret of our publishing. You were just talking about a small niche. My experience is, the smaller the niche is, the more successful you can become. As an independent publisher, and this is the last comment from my side, for the audience, you have 4 independent publishers sitting here. That means it's a publishing house, you have a face, you have a publisher. We are not part of a big group that we are, let's say, a private equity or whatever, and we are sold every 2 or 3 years. No, each single book, we are responsible for the success, and we are also responsible from the legal point of view. If something will happen and there is not a copyright for the book, all of us would have serious problems. So that means we face a big risk. It is possible to make a profit within a small niche, but so if I talk about me, so the motivation I do it is the benefit. And if you have a reader who writes you a long letter, not so often this happens, but you have a reader who writes, this book opened my eyes. Or you have an author. This morning I was talking to an author and he said, okay, I did a book with you, I'm so happy. It helped me to have another book with another bigger publisher. I could say, okay, I'm jealous now because the second book he's not doing with us, but I was proud to hear this, that I helped him in his career.
Okay, but I think it's very hard to choose the right book, which is very just meaningful for you, but also which sells just a little bit to make a little bit profit. So how do you choose books, for example? What is the main factor of choosing books? Intuition or some, I don't know, friends and colleagues and just recommendations from other people?
Yeah,
what is the main factor?
That's a very good question. I would say that, when we started, we were really focused on our readers, and we imagined it as ourselves, and we were doing books just for us. We started to do translations of art history and theory, some anthropology, design, and we translated text we really missed in the Ukrainian field. And that was mainly for us, for our small bubble. And then we just, we know for sure, this program we should create it from, very beginning, and, the authors we should bring into the Ukrainian field. But we didn't have enough readers for that, and we received so many feedbacks that, this text is, very difficult, we couldn't get it, and our sales was just dramatically low. But then 7 years after, now these books I mentioned, mentioned, it's almost sold out, and we received requests to republish it again. So I think this is just a matter of time. Even if we didn't had this audience before, you can really grow your reader. And I think this is what also we see as a mission of the publishing house, to create this circle of like-minded people who can grow with you, who can follow your suggestions, read your books, and then trust you on your choice, even if it's intuitively.
And you mentioned these like-minded people, and Roberto Calasso in this book writes what communion is very important, and connections with the readers the connection with readers is very important as well. And I wanted to ask Ula, how do you create this connection with readers? And Calasso himself says what the relationship of communion with readers is very important, but at the same time he stresses what this must be based only on a continuous, non-disappointed experience. But that is impossible because sometimes readers are disappointed. So how do you create that relationship with your readers? How loyal are your readers? How do you think loyal?
It's hard to say because well, we started with architecture books, and the architects community in Lithuania is like very supportive. So I really still feel a lot of, we have a huge fan club of architects who read not only architecture books, surprise, surprise, but they read actually everything that we publish. And that's, yeah, I think we just started with architects, which I think are very intellectual audience and interested in a lot of things. And yeah, I think that was like, I felt, okay, if you have people who believe in you and buy every single book you publish, so that's, well, that's a huge responsibility, and then we cannot really, we should somehow continue with this experience. Of course, there are books, so we also want to publish books that are sometimes questioning the status quo of like a lot of things that are not comfortable. And so then, I mean, the audience might not like it, but our goal is to make a book still so in such a quality that you could question the content, but that would all open you some kind of new perspective to it. So it's not that you always need to like a book, you could also dislike it and take the gift of disliking the book. But I also would like to refer to something that Philip said, that, okay, so you publish some, one title that allows you to publish 10 other titles or 3 other titles. And this is also always a magic for me, that it's not so, I mean, no one knows actually which title will sell, right? So if we could, so there is statistics that 1 out of 10 books is a bestseller, and it's super profitable. 2 books are like, okay, on the zero in the end, and 7 books are in minus. So, of course, everyone would like to, publish only these, bestsellers, but there is no list of bestsellers that you can, choose from. You also need to trust your intuition in the end. So you might buy author rights, translation rights for something you believe it will be a super bestseller, but suddenly you have like plenty of books in your warehouse, and what to do then?
Yeah, but sometimes it happens like you publish a book and you think, okay, it will be a bestseller, because in other countries it is bestseller #1. And you publish, for example, in your country that book, and it isn't bestseller. It is not profitable at all. You sell about 200 or 300 copies of it. And so, Rosalind, does it happen sometimes, and maybe often? I don't know.
Sorry, about books not being bestsellers.
Yeah, the books which are considered as bestsellers in other countries, but it didn't go well in your country.
I think Malaysia's a very different situation from Germany or Lithuania, in the sense that we're an open market. So a lot of UK and US publishers import their books into Malaysia. And if you publish in English, like we do, we're at a huge disadvantage, because we're fighting against the likes of Penguin Random House, Simon & Schuster, all the big giants. But I don't think that's necessarily an issue because we focus on nurturing our own local talent and also trying to push them internationally. But if you ask me, can I spot a bestseller? From my experience, I would tell you absolutely not. The books, which is not to say I don't want the best for my authors. I think they all have incredible talent. They all have the possibility of being bestsellers. But have I been able to accurately predict which books would go on to be on the charts? No. It's been absolute, should I say, dumb luck?
Yeah, but right now we are talking about sales, we're talking about commercial, but Calasso in this book also says what we don't have to talk about books in the terms of commercial or literary, and he says what we must talk in the terms of philosophical terms of good and evil. And it's a very strange idea because how we can talk about good and evil regarding books? How do you understand his saying of what we must talk about, just this book is good and this book is evil? What does it mean? Philip, what do you think?
If I may answer as an architect, so I'm also working as an architect, the question is, what is beauty and what is the opposite of beauty? And
everybody understands it differently.
And it has, yeah, it's an individual taste. And the question, what is a good book, is, I would say, a good book is a book which fits into the publishing program of a certain publisher. So that means we are doing books on architecture. If I would start doing a book, I don't know, on how to educate a child or something like this for young parents, maybe this book would not be a good in our publishing house because we are not recognized as a publisher for educational books. So that means, on the other hand, if we do a book, and we did a book in German language on Vilnius and on Kaunas. Kaunas, I would say in Germany, Vilnius people know about Vilnius, but about Kaunas, people don't know anything. I'm just simplifying. But this good book was selling good because it was a very, very small niche. It was only German language. And those people who are interested in Lithuania, they know about the book and they would consider this book as a good book because it fits exactly to their expectations from DOM publishers. And the same book, maybe if Rosa would publish the architectural guide of Kaunas in her publishing program, even in English language, and competing with Random House and all the big players, maybe this would not be a good book for her because it does not perfectly fit into your publishing program.
Well, if Ulla sponsors me to publish this, I'll be more than happy to do that. But I get very worried hearing good and evil books. I really don't think we should, start to label books as good and evil. I feel we're just like a step away from book burning, book banning. So,
yeah, Ulla.
I don't remember actually the context in which Roberto Calasso mentioned the good and evil books. Just like maybe read a bit earlier, but I could share from my experience that we have published. So we are publishing books on architecture, and then some people think that every book we publish somehow represents what we are thinking about it. And I say, no, it's not what we are thinking about. We want, for example, to publish books that open your mind and open some different perspectives. And then if you all know something about architecture, as you do maybe, so we have published Le Corbusier book, which is like philosophy of the modern architecture and etc., etc. And the next book in the architecture series was Jane Jacobs that says that everything is evil what Le Corbusier has written. And then maybe in this sense, like books can be good and evil in terms of the content, and they can talk to each other. And when I say, do I do Lapas represent more the Le Corbusier philosophy or the Jane Jacobs? No, neither. We just need to know what is happening, what has happened in the intellectual world, and we want to present you all the rainbow of perspectives you can have. So yeah, good and evil, as Roz and Philip already said, it depends on the context.
Yeah, and Roberto Calasso also said what each publisher, consciously or unconsciously, he creates only one book in his publishing house, and that book consists of all the books he published. And how would you describe that one book you published?
That's interesting. I wouldn't say that we have one title that can describe all our practices, because as Ula said, it should be really different voices, and as an institution you should help, to raise it and also to show different angles even within this small niche. But I think actually this book, Art of Publishing, can really enhance maybe this process behind the scene. And I was thinking maybe, for Ukrainian scene, they would be also really good. So I'm looking forward, maybe we will do it also. And it could be that one book.
Yeah. And you? You published many books, but if you have just to describe it in some sentences, for example.
This is a very difficult question. So maybe... So in our history of the publishing house, so from time to time we published books which were so unique. It was not a copyright, it was not a license what we translated into English or into German. These were original editions, quite unique and very specific. So 3 years ago we published a 7-volume, 3,400 pages on sub-Saharan African architecture. We were working on this title for more than 6 years, and it was an enormous investment into this book. But since we worked such a long time, and there were more than 300 authors involved, so the whole circle of those people, I would say in the whole world, who knew about this book was quite high. So everyone knew about the book. So in the end, the book was very, very successful. But it required another secret of publishing business. And the secret is you need to have patience. You need to wait for an author, not 1 year, 2 years. Sometimes we have to wait 5 or 6 years until the author has developed his idea, submitted his text. So it sometimes takes very, very long. And the other secret is you have to show, or you have to stay with your continuity of your idea and of your philosophy. So you cannot change every season the whole publishing program. So you cannot start doing cooking books in one season, and then next year you do children books, and then you do travel guides and so on. You have to follow a strict idea. I'm not, don't misunderstand me, because you're traveling, you do traveling books, children books, but in cookbooks. But it's not bad to make cookbooks. But if we would start doing cookbooks, maybe this would be a so-called bad book for us, because no one expected a cooking book. But if I do a cooking book as an author in her publishing house, maybe this would be the bestseller.
And Rose, and what's that one book for you, for your publishing house?
This is a very tricky question. And I think when Roberto Calasso spoke about the one book, he was doing so at the end of his career. So it was probably after 50 or 60 years of publishing. And when you compress 50 years of producing books, you get to see a trend. I mean, my company has only been running for 12 years, so the trend is probably, as Philip says, we do cookbooks. I've actually tried to do kids' books because that's a passion of mine, but it didn't work out. So I think you're putting me on the spot now when you ask me to describe that one singular book that represents my publishing company. I would honestly say at this moment, I don't know. I hope it will be the literary fiction that we that we have started to produce. Fingers crossed, in 10 years I'll be back here and I'll be able to give you some better insights, I hope.
And Ulla, you just, I think you already answered, because it's architecture is in the core of your publishing house, or not?
I really like your question, and I will start answering it, referring to Ross. And I think that's, also in the finance world, is very important, not only how much, but in what period. And so now, as Labas is only 10 years, or it's already 10 years, it depends. I would see that, so I can say now only in these 10 years, perspective from 10 years. And I know that Roberto Calasso was writing about referring to singular book, like one book, but I have not a book and not one. So it's actually for me, the book is not so important. We are working with authors. And in these 10 years, I would say that everything what Gabija Grušaitė and Marija Dramaitė is writing, we do publish. And they are kind of our singular or dual authors that represent one, the architectural path, and the other, the fiction path, the very strong fiction path. And if to mention one book out of them, so it would be hard, but I guess with Gabija is the Grybo Sapnas, the Mycelium Dream, that is now released. And really, there is topics of architecture, of everything actually what we have ever published is somehow in the Mycelium Dream. And also with Marija Dramaitė's books on architecture, they also, it's not only architecture, they are moving slowly to the anthropological perspectives. And the new book, which is called Jūs gaunate butą, right? It's also comprehension of everything what was done before. So, sorry to Roberto Calasso, but we have more.
Yeah, and Roberto Calasso, when he speaks about problems, he says what the problems which the publishers are discussing right now were discussed some 100 years ago, but also he says what one of the biggest problems right now, it is the disappearing identity of publishers. And he says what even the publishing houses themselves, we don't know what actually they do. And do you think also what disappearing identity is one of the biggest problems in publishing industry right now, and how to build that identity, in your opinion?
Yeah, I can definitely see that problem, and we discuss it a lot with my colleagues, that even when we receive the request for publishing book, we usually receive request for printing the book. So people even don't know what publisher really do, and all this process, like the huge process, from create the idea to producing the book and then to, sell it and present it. It's a huge, and it's sometimes, for several years. But somehow a lot of people and young writers, they just, has this idea of publishing house as a printing house, actually. So what we do in our practice is that we also trying to enhance publishers' practice, and with my colleagues, we do sometimes even lectures on how to publish book, to, just to describe all this process. And that as a small press, we have this, I would say, unique and a small approach to work with each author, and this is what I like, to stay within these frames, to be in a small publisher, because you have time and attention to each title, each book, and to work with the authors. And I think it's very important to, just to understand what publishers do, to talk about it clearly, and to have a respect on work, because it's really a lot, and I would say the life of the book, sometimes it can last for like 5 years or even longer, and then you're trying to keep this attention for the title even within other books you publish.
And Philippa, what do you think on this subject? Because Calasso says what even logos are disappearing from some of from some of the books, and what the identity is lost somewhere else. Do you think it's a problem?
Anastasia was just saying that sometimes you have the feeling that authors or third parties consider a publisher as a, let's say, extended arm of a printer. We often face this problem, and when I understand that my counterpart or the people you are talking to, they don't understand what a publisher is doing, we had cases that we advised them, okay, we give you a contact to a printer, go for the printer, do it yourself. It seems that you know about. In the end, half a year later, they came back to us and they said, okay, you were right. Because they had a garage full of 1,000 books and they didn't know how to distribute. They didn't know how to communicate the book. And this is another parameter of publishing. When you meet an author, the author has a strict idea. He would like to do a book on a water bottle. And maybe he's the one and only in the whole world who can do it. But he might not be the perfect person to make the world know that this is the unique water bottle. And the publisher can help him. And if we would have sit here and talked 10 years ago, the free seat would be easily to fill because there were so many other independent publishers, but they are disappearing. And this, this might be a cleaning process in the whole publishing business. It had become so easy. You can just submit your manuscript. You just submit a Word file to Amazon, and they say, okay, we do print on demand, and people think that this is a publishing. And we have to admit, this is another new model, another modern model of publishing. But we represent another kind of publishing, and I'm not saying that we are dinosaurs in the business. I would even say we are the peak, and we remain the peak.
Rose, and what do you think about it?
I think the question of publishers losing their identity and then equating it to their brands on the book being very small is not necessarily the same thing. Identity and brand identity are often two very different things. What I would say is that if you ask the general public to name maybe 5 publishing brands, very few could do so. Because publishing brands just do not register in the minds even of book-loving and the book-buying public when we compare it to people like car brands, fashion brands, supermarket brands. You know, where are publishing brands on that echelon? Where I think the branding really comes in is with the author. And this is what publishing houses, especially the more successful ones, are doing. They're investing more in building author brands, in supporting the authors, into creating that brand. And that is ultimately what's going to sell the book. I mean, putting a huge logo on my book is not going to sell my books. Nobody cares that Clarity Publishing published this, but they want to know more about the author. They want to see their social media, you know, their press relations. All those things, I think, are more important.
After reading the Calasso book, I think, so before I thought that, okay, what does the publisher do? And I had it only for myself, the answer that maybe we are curating narratives. And if you look at the publishing as this, and a publishing house through the, as the publishing house who is creating a narrative, and then you can understand that, okay, so does this publishing house has an identity or not? And on the other hand, it's not obligatory to have this identity. I mean, it's all good with self-publishing, and a lot of people who are sending me manuscripts, I really advise them to do it self-publishing. And then maybe a publisher can find them via already published book. It also might happen, but it's strange that Philip said that in the world you see that the independent publishers are somehow disappearing, but what I see in Lithuanian market, it's that the independent publishers are like on the hype, and like there's like so new independent publishing house every year, and I mean publishers who do just philosophy books, and they are visible. They are here at the book fair and they are selling their books. So I think somehow it depends on the market, and maybe in the future it might be that the publisher will need to have a very strong identity to sell the books and to help the authors to be visible in this narrative that he creates. I don't know. So it's in Lithuania, I think it's really important who is publishing what, maybe globally not so much. But I mean, as Philip also said, if you are published by dumb publishers, it's already a brand. You are distributed and everyone like knows you.
Okay, and we are already running out of time. And so why publish books? And Roberto Calasso says at the end of a book, because publishing books is fun. And when you come to a Frankfurt Book Fair and to the famous parties, of course you understand why publishing books is fun. So is really publishing books fun? It's a funny business.
So much fun. Really, I was meaning to answer the same, but I forgot the Calasso, already answered. I mean, of course, it's difficult, it's struggling all the time, and I mean, either you are independent publishing or you work in a big publishing company, you still face a lot of problems. They are different, but I mean, still publishing problems. But it's, I would say, just very interesting and important, when you realize this practice is not only like a book selling, but, as a mission. And then you really, can curate and create this narrative around and create really community around you. So I would say that's fun. That's the only reason, we keep going and find the strength to, survive in these hard times.
For you, is it fun, publish books?
Frankly speaking, it's not always fun. If you have to talk to an author after 1 year, after 2 years, after 3 years, and he always promises you something to deliver, it's not fun. But when the first book, the advanced copy, comes from the printer, and it's a common procedure that the printing house sends to the publisher a first book, and you open, and this is satisfaction. You have a book, and it's not only printed paper. Behind each single book stands a long process. It's the initial idea by the publisher, the initial idea by the author or by someone else. And then after such a very, very difficult procedure, you have the first book. And then I would say from the satisfaction, it makes fun, of course. But satisfaction first after a long process.
Rose?
Yes, it's definitely a very fun industry. And, if you enjoy books, you enjoy working with books, it's brilliant. And I think what very few people talk about is also the relationships that you make when you're involved in publishing, not just with your authors and your editors, but the international publishers. I'm not kidding when I say that the publishing community worldwide, it really is like a big family of very like-minded, brilliant, friendly, very open individuals. And, I feel very privileged to be a part of it and to be here.
And Ulla, where is 10 years of fun?
Well, I just figured out that in the economic classification, publishing falls under the category of entertainment business, and that was also a revealing point. Okay, so if that's entertaining business, so I mean, we are supposed to have fun, and for these 10 years, I was having a lot of fun. But I think publishing is for people who want to have fun, taking huge risks. So if you enjoy taking risks, so then you will have fun in publishing. Otherwise, you better do something else.
Okay, and already my phone says time to stand. So actually we have to finish our conversation as well. And thank you for coming here. Thank you for publishing these good books. And thank you all the audience who came just here to listen about the books about publishing industry. Thank you very much.